Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our next installment of Conversations on Zoom. I'm Mark Kligman. On behalf of all of us who are organizing the events with Geraldine Arbach, Martha Stellmacher, we welcome you to today's program. We're so glad that we could continue today's program, which was not made possible in February due to weather, but Isabel Glans and Susanna Weichshahach are eminent performers, scholars. We're so glad to have them, and my thanks to them for preparing for today's presentation, which looks wonderful. And we also want to thank Philip Alexander for his help in organizing today. And with no further ado, Phil, we're off to you to start our program.
Hello, everyone. My name is Phil Alexander. I'm a musician and researcher based in Edinburgh in Scotland. This is a wonderful COZ, wonderful conversation between two of the foremost researchers and exponents and performers of Sephardic vocal and instrumental music. And I've been helping put together some of the PowerPoint, so I've had a little preview of the amazing music that they're going to play us and talk about and share the kind of wealth of their experience and knowledge as well. So very much looking forward to it. I'm going to introduce both participants, and then I'm going to hand over to Isabel to run the show, and I will be playing the PowerPoint slides and putting on the music while both people are talking. Just to be aware, we have a number of recordings of different quality. Some are studio recordings, some are field recordings, some are live performances. So you will hear a variation in audio quality, but also volume. So you might want to, put headphones on and be fast on the volume control so that you get the best version of the audio. Okay, I'm going to introduce both of our fantastic participants. Susanna Weichshahach was born in Argentina. She's lived in Israel since 1958. She has a PhD degree in musicology from Tel Aviv University, and since 1973 she's been researching the Sephardi musical tradition at the Jewish Music Research Center of the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. She's conducted fieldwork amongst Sephardi communities in Bulgaria, Belgium, France, Greece, Macedonia, Morocco, Peru, Spain, Turkey, and Israel. Susanna is a lecturer at Tel Aviv and Haifa universities, and she's held research grants from the Spanish Ministry of Culture and Science, where she carried out a comparative study of Spanish and Sephardi oral traditions. She's also participated in numerous conferences and courses in Spain on the subject of Sephardic oral tradition. Her co-conversationist today, Isabel Gantz, has performed as a mezzo-soprano throughout North and South America, Asia, Europe, and Israel. She's a pioneer in the field of Sephardic music. Her New York-based ensemble Alhambra was founded in 1981 with the goal of transcribing, recording, and performing the vast treasures of Sephardic music, which have been preserved by the descendants of the Jews of Spain. This ensemble has toured widely, recorded 4 CDs, and in 1985 won first prize in the Jewish Performing Arts Competition in New York City. Isabel earned a Doctor of Musical Arts degree from the Eastman School of Music in 1980. She received a Fulbright grant to teach at the Rubin Academy of Music and Dance in Jerusalem in 1997, and an NEA grant to perform recitals of contemporary music in colleges and universities throughout the US. She served as a cantorial soloist in synagogues in Amsterdam, Munich, Winnipeg, Winston-Salem, Los Angeles, New Jersey, Long Island, Tulsa, and Houston. She's composed many choral works based on sacred texts. Her string quartet, A Sephardic Hanukkah, was premiered in 2008 by the Apollo Chamber Players. I think we're going to hear a bit of that, aren't we? And her trio for oboe, English horn, and piano, Sprint, was premiered at the Holocaust Museum, Houston, in March 2020. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Isabel to take it from here. I think we have the classic unmute problem, Isabel.
Unmute. Okay, welcome everyone. Forgive us for being 3.5 months late. I live in Houston, Texas, and on February 16th, which was the original date for our presentation, Texas had no power for 4 days, which meant no electricity, no heat, no Wi-Fi. We now know that over 700 people died of hypothermia and carbon monoxide poisoning. So it was a ghastly time. Fortunately, it is now June and much warmer. Susanna Weichschahak and I will be using videos and audio recordings to illustrate how professional ensembles devoted to the performance of Judeo-Spanish song use the material in field recordings of native singers to create arrangements that made those songs come alive for Western audiences. Susanna has recorded hundreds of native singers of Sephardic song in Israel. Her audio and video recordings can be heard and seen in the sound archives of the Jewish Music Research Center of Hebrew University in Jerusalem. In 1997, I had a Fulbright grant to teach voice, vocal chamber music, and 20th century vocal techniques at the Rubin Academy of Music and Dance in Jerusalem, and to conduct research in Sephardic song at the Sound Archive, which was then known as the Phonoteca. Susanna will now tell you more.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you very much to Philip for its presentation. He spoke about a little bit of my history, and it led us to 1973, when my music mentor, my music tutor for my PhD dissertation, Professor Simcha Aron, recommended me to the Jewish Music Research Center, the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, and its director, Professor Israel Alder, proposed me to research the musical repertoire of the Sephardim, since no other researcher was working on this subject. I was always deeply grateful for his proposal, and since then until today, this is my main research subject. In 1980, the Hebrew University published my first disc with the recordings of Spanish songs from Bulgaria, Turkey, Saloniki, and Sarajevo that I had collected by then in Israel. In 1975, I was finishing my fieldwork in Peru for my dissertation, which was on the subject of the music of 4 Indian tribes of the Peruvian Amazon. I was in Lima waiting to take my flight back to Israel. And I went to the Turkish synagogue, where they were singing a hot ketana, preparing for Rosh Hashanah. The congregation, to my interest, was singing one melody, and the rabbi was singing another. When I asked, through this occasion, I discovered the Moroccan repertoire. It was Rabbi Avram Ben Hamu, who was born in Tetuan, and was then the rabbi of Lima, who invited me to his house, and he and his wife sang for me romances and songs and many, many good coplas from the Moroccan repertoire. That was a discovery. Now, in my work, impressed as I was by the richness of the repertoire of the Sephardim in Israel, I traveled in search of their 12 diasporas in Bulgaria, Belgium, France, Greece, Macedonia, Morocco, Peru, Spain, Turkey, Mexico, Argentina, and Chile. All the recordings from my research are deposited and catalogued at the National Sound Archives for all scholars, at disposition to all scholars and singers to consult. And luckily, several of them, the serious ones, do that. Now, when I was in Madrid during a sabbatical, I met the folklorist and ethnologue José Manuel Fraile, called by his nickname Chema. He's expert in Spanish oral tradition, one of the best today, who learned by heart many, many songs from my field recordings. Especially during his illness, he had long time immobilized because of surgery, eye surgery, that did not help, and he remained blind. But this time he learned perfectly all the songs from the repertoire. He himself had produced many CDs, but Tecnosaga, which is a publishing house specialized in oral tradition. Its director, Macario Santamaria, and his name already raises questions also for himself of a probably converso origin. You know, the conversos always took very, very, very Christian names, some family names. So Macario published by then several CDs of my collection, my recording. One for the Eastern Mediterranean. Where shall I put this? That's perfect. One from the Eastern Mediterranean and one from Morocco. And from this, my friends started to learn the songs. Later, Tecnosaga published several, one from Sarajevo, Voces de Sarajevo, and one from Turkey. This one performed, can you see that? Yes, performed by only one informant. That was the interest of the song. And it's a well-known, she's a well-loved informant. She's Zichrona Levracha. It is Bienvenida Berta Aguado Mushabak. So at that time, I also met Eliseo Parra. Eliseo Parra is a renowned singer in Spain and abroad, an expert in Spanish folklore and player, a polyphacetic musician, plays many instruments. Both Chema and Eliseo fell in love with the Sephardic repertoire. With Chema, I went also to many remote Spanish villages in search of songs and romances in the Spanish oral tradition, which I thought could be parallel to the Sephardic one, and many of them were. After Chema and Eliseo kept listening and learning the Judeo-Spanish recording, they accompanied me in my conferences all over Spain, and with them, and later with a female singer, Carmen Rodas Terrón, we formed in 1994 the Ensemble Arboleras. We recorded 3 basic CDs. Number 1 has coplas and songs, coplas y cancionero. Number 2 has only romancero. And the third, Arboleras, has the compositions of the 20th century among the communities of the Sephardi. We had concerts all over Spain and its main universities, and later Paris and New York. Our main goal was to present the richness of the Judeo-Spanish repertoire, which is much wider than the 5 or 6 songs that always performed by professional singers. And I was very pleased to witness the influence of arboleras on singers in Europe and America. Many of them sing songs out from the arbolera, and that was the main aim of my work with them. The singers over everywhere renewed their programs with new old traditional songs, and luckily gave up the guitar, reserved only for the appropriate songs. With this same approach of arboleras, I worked with the singers. Uy, se cayó uno por ahí. Bueno, se lo di a él, lo tiene. With Orit Perlman and Kobi Zarko, and recorded Ventanas Altas de Selanik. This was a joint project with the Haifa University where I taught, with the Haifa University support, and with my Arab and Jewish students for the instrumental accompaniment. We are now working on Morenica, which will be a USB, a disc on key, on the tradition from Izmir. And we only made the Cilia Mi Amor on Tetuan, which you will see later in this disc. All this work, it was important to say, was sponsored by the Saloniki and Greece Jury Heritage Center. And I am very grateful because it was an opportunity to do that. We were always committed to a most faithful interpretation, accompanied with a musical instrument that had been in use in the Sephardi communities: oud, jumbush, violin, but played not like this, but on the knee, supported on the knee. Panderos, daire, and pandericos, and the kanun. And the canon, let me see, show you the canon. Okay. I hope you can see it. Yes, you can. This is my grandson helping me. It's no, I hope you can hear me like this. It's okay? You hear? You can hear me? Yes. As you see, it has 75 chords, strings, organized 3 for each note, and it's played with plectrum on the finger. El rey cantó a madrugada ante la reina posada, la topaba en el espejo, mirando su hermosura. Dos hijos del rey tengo, y dos de ti se hacen 4. Los del rey van a la guerra, y los tuyos al milagro. You see, the canon gives the possibility of playing the Turkish makam. In this case, it is also possible to play another instrument because it is makam Hijaz, who has an augmented form between second and third degree. But you can also play smaller intervals of the quarter tones. For instance, for another song, I need to have those with a C, which is not bemol and not natural, but quarter. And Mi, not bemol and not natural, but salgas, madre, fuera al cortillo, salgas, madre, fuera al cortillo, veréis venir, noviante el vuestro hillo, que sobre la mar dio la vida caminar, ay madre, con pino doy la vida al alumbrar. Vos vení mi dama por la mañana, vení mi dama por la mañana, beberes café con naranjada, vení mi novia, hablaremos, bodas haremos. This is a wedding song. It's finished. Hablaremos, we shall talk, we shall bodas haremos. But for a joke, they used to sing. Con bodas haremos, me echaré con vos. I will sleep with you. But this is a wedding song which used to be sung in this makam with twice the note in half bemol. Huh? Well, and now we shall listen to Isabel. Isabel is a pioneer, one of the, I think, the first that put Sephardic music on stage and treated the repertoire with love and respect, that she should be.
Thank you, Susan. I once tried to be an ethnomusicologist, and my husband and I were in Tangiers, and we went to synagogue, and what I got was Yigdal Elohim Chai v'yishtabach. How did Old Lang Syne get to Tangiers? You figure it out. I'd like to give a brief history of the recordings of Judeo-Spanish Song, which began on wax cylinders and later 78 RPM records. Early in the 20th century, Isaac Al-Ghazi recorded in Izmir, primarily in Ladino or Judeo-Espanol. Chaim Effendi recorded songs in Ladino known to the communities of Istanbul and Salonika, as well as High Holy Day compositions in Hebrew. I want to concentrate, however, on the LP era, beginning in the 1950s. Who were those pioneers? In 1956, the collector Henrietta Yurchenko lugged her huge tape recorder and other equipment throughout northern Morocco, recording the songs and ballads of the Jews of Tetuan and Tangier, releasing them on a Folkways LP in 1983. Henrietta was my neighbor and mentor when I lived in New York from 1981 to 1986. She once called me up and said, "Quick, come upstairs, Pete Seeger is here." There he is with Henrietta. I had first met Seeger when I was a teenager, but that's another story. In 1959, Folkways Records released Sephardic folk songs sung by Gloria Levy. Gloria's mom, Emily Levy, who was born in Alexandria, was another mentor of mine in New York. From her, I learned Fish Shara Kanet Bintit Masha, a Sephardic song from Port Said in 5 languages, sung to the famous Turkish melody Üsküdar'a, which my ensemble Alhambra recorded on a CD called The Art of Judeo-Spanish Song in 1988. Fishara kanet petit masha la signorina aux beaux yeux noirs, comme la luna était la sua faccia qui éclairait le boulevard. Comme la luna était la sua faccia qui éclairait le boulevard. In 1959, Yitzhak Levy, Isaac Levy, published the first volume of Chants Judeo-Espagnols. He eventually published 4 volumes of secular songs and 10 volumes of sacred songs, mostly in Hebrew. Levy was criticized for changing irregular meters to a more appetizing, shall we say, regular pulsation, and for removing microtonal embellishments when he transcribed the recordings. This is a photo of Isaac Levy and of the cover of his LP called Songs in Judeo-Espanol, which was released in 1980, 3 years after Levy's death. In the summer of 1982, my late husband Abi and I were in Israel and went to visit Isaac Levy's widow, Kochava. Here are 2 photos of us singing together with her. Kochava herself can be heard on the CD Ladino Legacy, singing with her daughters Susie and Yasmin. Yasmin has produced many CDs during the past 2 decades. This one is her first from the year 2000. And this is a more recent one where she's become much more glamorous in the intervening years. When I was singing and visiting her mom, she was 7 years old. In 1962, the famous Spanish opera singer Victoria de Los Angeles released an LP called Spanish Songs of the Renaissance, accompanied by early music instrumentalists. This was a totally different approach from what Gloria Levy's guitar-accompanied folk style sounded like. Also in 1962, a folk singer named Carolyn Hester recorded the Sephardic song Los Bilbilicos, a song she'd learned in Greenwich Village folk clubs. Carolyn and I met often at folk festivals. My first husband, Peter Gardner, and I were a duo called the Gardners during the years 1959 to 1964, specializing in international folk songs. We were the opening act for Joan Baez, Judy Collins, Simon and Garfunkel, Smothers Brothers, Odetta, Miriam Makeba, many others. After our divorce, I served as the opening act for Bob Dylan at Gertie's Folk City in New York. Dylan, by the way, played harmonica on Carolyn Hester's 1962 album. In 1976, Jordi Savall, who played gamba on one of Victoria de Los Angeles' LPs, along with his wife, the soprano Montserrat Figueras, formed Hesperion 20 and released a 2-LP album titled Weltliche Musik in christlichen und jüdischen Spanien, Music in Christian and Jewish Spain. Over the years, Savall's recordings have drifted away from a purely early music orientation as he incorporated more Middle Eastern sounds. In 1980, The Voice of the Turtle, directed by Judith Wax, whom I bumped into in the National Sound Archives in Jerusalem in 1997, and who sadly died in 2008, released the LP called The Time of Singing Is Come. Phil, do you have that photo? There it is. There it is. The Voice of the Turtle has produced more recordings of Sephardic music than perhaps any other ensemble in the world. In 1981, the beloved Bosnian singer, composer, accordionist, guitarist, Flori Jagoda, who was born Flori Papo, released Canticas de mi Nona, on which her Hanukkah song Ocho Candelicas was first heard. Although it's a composed song, it has become one of the most popular Sephardic songs in the world, recorded by groups like Pink Martini and the Chopped Liver River Band. In 1992, I met Flori when she performed at the quincentennial celebration in Istanbul, commemorating 500 years since Turkey had taken in the Jews who had been exiled from Spain. Ensembles from all over the world performed there, including my group Alhambra. It was there that I also met Judith Cohen and her daughter Tamar, who was quite small then, as well as the Turkish Sephardic ensemble Los Pasharos Sefaradis. Flori survived the Holocaust with her parents, first on the Croatian island of Korčula, then by sailing on a fishing boat to Bari, an Italian city on the Adriatic, where they stayed until the end of the war. The rest of her family members, including her beloved Nona, the grandmother from whom she learned all her Sephardic songs, were murdered in the Holocaust. In Bari, she met a U.S. Army sergeant named Harry Jagoda, married him, and moved to Alexandria, Virginia in 1946. She composed over 30 songs in Ladino, produced 5 albums of songs, and was awarded a National Heritage Fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts. Flori died this past January 29th, which was Shabbat Shirah, the Sabbath of Song. She was 97 years old. Also in 1981, the ensemble I formed in Houston, Texas, called The Broken Consort, released Judeo-Spanish Romanceros. Have you got that photo, Phil? There we go. In 1976, I had fallen into the field of Sephardic music totally by accident. The Renaissance Festival was coming to Magnolia, Texas, and I was asked to put together an early music group to perform there. I began researching Spanish Renaissance music and stumbled upon Sephardic songs. I listened again to the Victoria de Los Angeles recordings, and eureka! I had found the synthesis between classical music, which I'd been schooled in, and folk music, whose repetitive verse-refrain structure I was beginning to find tedious. I had been unknowingly searching for this synthesis. Later that year, I moved to New York City and formed Alhambra, which was initially a trio composed of the extraordinary oudist George Murgadichian and the early music gambist Rosamond Morley. George studied clarinet at Juilliard and ethnomusicology at Wesleyan, but was self-taught on the oud. He was worshipped, especially by the Armenian community, and we sadly lost him in 2006. In 1982, we recorded the cassette, Alhambra Performs Judeo-Spanish Song, but it wasn't released by Global Village Music until 1986. In New York, in addition to meeting Henrietta Yurchenko and Emily Levy, I often hopped on the subway and soaked up the informal singing at the Sephardic Home for the Aged on Cropsey Avenue in Brooklyn. The famous singer, oud player, Victoria Hazan, who was born Victoria Nino in Salihli, Turkey, near Izmir, performed and led the singing. I believe that the man in the photo is her younger brother, but I'm not sure. Victoria had moved to New York in 1920, married a man named Israel Hazan, and in the 1940s, recorded songs in Turkish, Greek, and Ladino. I shall never forget one visit I made to the home a few days before Pesach. I believe it was in 1983. In the large social hall, there were over 100 people, most of them in wheelchairs. This is Victoria Hazan in the foreground here playing the rik or tambourine. They were singing the Sephardic song, the Sephardic version rather, of Echad Mi Odea, a Passover song, Who Knows Number One. It's a cumulative song with 13 verses, each time ending with verse 1, which translates as, One is the Creator, blessed be his name. In the photo is Victoria. I'm going to sing one verse of Ken Tu Piense and show you what they did each time verse 1 came around. Ken su piense entendiense alavar al Dios creense, cuál es el uno, cuál es el uno, uno es el Criador, uno es el Criador, uno es el Criador, Baruch Hu, Baruch Shemo. And to see a room of over 100 people looking up at the ceiling with their arms outstretched, saying, One is the Creator. It was a beautiful sight. Victoria Hazan died in 1995, age 99. One other pioneering recording from the 1980s that I'd like to focus on is the Canadian ensemble Jerineldo's LP from 1983, called Chansons Judeo-Espagnol, Volume 1. The meticulous researcher Judith Cohen, who is with us today, has concentrated on the Moroccan repertoire and recorded many CDs. We'll play a track from one of them a bit later in our presentation. During the more recent CD era, hundreds of recordings in the field of Sephardic music have been released. We're now in the post-CD era, and even more repertoire can be downloaded. The output of my esteemed colleague, Susana Vaik-Shahak, includes 15 CDs, including 3 by her Spain-based ensemble Arboleros, as well as 14 books, including repertoire from Salonika and Tetuan that were previously unknown. Without ethnomusicologists such as Susanna and her colleague Edwin Serusi at the Jewish Music Research Center in Jerusalem, ensembles would be performing the same limited amount of material. I'd just like to say that I'm indebted also to the intrepid collector, Joel Bressler, for much of this history of recorded Sephardic music. Joel has bought every record, cassette, CD, or download that contains even one Sephardic song, and he now has over 8,000 sample audios ready to post on the web. Thank you, Joel. And now we'll hear the music.
Now, can you hear me? Yes. We will start with the song Las Tres Clavinas del Enamorado. a well-known song among the Sephardim from Turkey and Greece, and most especially from Rhodes and from Izmir. It belongs to the cancionero, Judeo-Spanish strophic songs with no strict order of stanzas. The melody is often adopted from the Turkish Sharki songs. As such, the scales or melodic modes belong to the Turkish makamat. In this case, the song is in makam Hijaz with augmented interval between the second and third note. Here is our first example, sung by Estela Mordo, whom I recorded in Buenos Aires. As you may hear, the song includes a refrain in Turkish, with a Turkish expression of feeling aman, and speaking about the sweet and lovely Minush, Sheker Minush, sweet Minush, Yaron Minush, my dear friend Minush. Please.
Tres gravinas en un tiesto, una blanca y una rosa. La de en medio es correlada, en pesillo del amor. Aman minush, minush, zekel minush, minush. A la mar yo me voy a echar, un pescado voy a ferrar, 7 novios voy a tomar, yo a ti te voy a quitar. Aman minush, minush, zehel minush, minush.
Isabel. Isabel?
What? What's supposed to be off?
Isabel, do you want to say something about the next one?
No. Isabella will
Sorry.
demonstrate.
I thought I had turned my phone off, but it's not off. Okay, are we going to play the next video? Then I'll talk.
Alla bravita.
Tres clavinas
The next song,
In the video are Rehan Pasternak on violin, Jenny Luna was doing the vocals, Adam Good on oud, Rami Al-Assa on the percussion, and I was playing the sham. The sham is this thing. Technically, it's called a Hirtenschalmei, which sounds German, which it is, shepherd's sham. The reason I use it is because it imitates the sound of a Turkish zurna very well. Now, the zurna has an exposed double reed, so you have to spend your life practicing. The double reed is hidden in here so that it is easier, although it does take a lot of air to play this instrument. It is possible to do a few quarter tones on this, which I've managed. So here is playing the first 5 notes of D minor. Here is D major. Here is D with the F half sharp in the middle. So I'll be using it later when we play a song in a Husseini mode.
continue?
Next.
Yes. The next song speaks about Sirkici, a well-known neighborhood in Istanbul. The lover walks to see his beloved. The rhythm of these songs points also to Eastern influences using an aksak rhythm. Aksak means, not straight. This rhythm points, before we have a...
Are we going to do the Arboleros version of Tres Clavinas?
Okay, yes, okay, good, I forgot. Yes, Arboleras doing also. Sorry. Go ahead.
Tres cravinas en un tiesto, una blanca y otra ros. La del medio es correlada, el pesillo del amor. Ama minos, yarum minos, sheker minos. No me veas amarillo, mis caras eran cunchas, el calor y la tiquilla me trujeron a espejar. Ama minos, yarum minos, sheker minos.
Thank you, I forgot about that. Well, as I began to say, this song is about Sirkici. This is the neighborhood in Istanbul. And the rhythm of these songs points to the Eastern rhythmic tradition of Turkey, what is called usul. Usul is the rhythm. This usul is aksak. Why it is aksak? It is composed with one bar of 3 and one of 2. It's 3 and 2. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Las calmenos de Sirkici, no voy a pasar y voy a tornar. And this is kept during the song. But when this is sometimes the professional musicians don't cope very well with the 5 meter, but the group of Isabel does it and very good. So we can see now I'm listening to Malka Dayan Maish, Mazal Gini and Yafa Maish from Izmir, recorded in Yahud. In Yahud, many people from Izmir established themselves there. And when you arrive next time to Israel, from the plane going down into Lud, You look to your left, and there is Yahut, where the Izmirlis sing so well. Vacation, please.
Yafa, métete un poco más en junto. Así, toda.
Los caminos de Cerquillo son llenos de arena. Los caminos de Cerquillo son llenos de arena. Yo voy a pasar, yo voy a tornar por ver a ti, morena. Yo voy a pasar, yo voy a tornar por ver a ti, morena. Morena tú, morenico yo, vemos desposaremos. Morena tú, morenico yo, vemos desposaremos. Si no te quieres desposar, vemos frecuentaremos. Si no te quieres desposar, vemos frecuentaremos. Él mi padre me dio a mí campos y viñas. Él mi padre me dio a mí campos y viñas. Yo no te tomo a ti pasha, ni por tapón de pila. Yo no te tomo a ti pasha, ni por tapón de pila.
And now, two versions, one of them by group Brio and another one by Alhambra. Pay attention to the rhythm.
Yafa.
Caminos de Cirqueggi se hincheron de arena. Los caminos de Cirqueggi se hincheron de arena. Por pasar y por tornar y ver a mi morena. Por pasar y por tornar y ver a mi morena. Morena tú, moreno yo, ven nos esposaremos. Morena tú, moreno yo, ven nos esposaremos. Si no te place frecuentar, venimos.
So the countertenor here is Jose Lemos from Brazil. The director of Brio is Steve Rosenberg, who plays guitars and recorders. You can hear, first of all, that it's a very early music interpretation of the song, and also they made it into a waltz, which is very interesting. The next one is Alhambra, and with Jenny Luna on vocals. This is from our CD, which is called Tres Clavinas.
Los caminos de Cirqueggi se hincheron de arena. Los caminos de Cirqueggi se hincheron de arena. Por pasar y por tornar y verte a ti, morena. Por pasar y por tornar y verte a ti, morena. Morena tú, morena yo, vemos frecuentaremos. Morena tú, morena yo, vemos frecuentaremos. Si no te place frecuentar, vemos esposaremos. Si no te place frecuentar, vemos esposaremos.
Now we listen to a copla. Copla is the third of the traditional genres in the Judeo-Spanish repertoire. A copla were composed after the expulsion from Spain, already in the communities they formed in the Eastern Mediterranean. The coplas were composed by Jews, sung by Jews about Jewish subjects, mostly with a didactic intention, and they were often printed. In this case, a copla for the festivity of Tu B'Shvat, the festivity of nature, all the flowers come to praise God and debate among them which one is better qualified to do so. Each one bragging about its virtues, its perfume, the use to wash the face, to make syrup or to prepare sweet jam. This copla was composed in the early 18th century and it repeatedly printed in Turkey and in Salonique. But it is sung nowadays only by the Moroccan Sephardim. We will see a short part of the many, many stanzas of this copla, sung by Rina Ben Abu Ben Arrosh, born in Tangier, and then the same song in more recent versions. So, Rina Ben Abu.
¿Sí? Cantar de las flores.
Alabar quiero al Dios que es grande y loares que crió para el hombre tantas maneras de flores y todas son diferentes en colores y en olores, y entre todas las mejores es el almizclero mi, sobre todo es alabar a el Jai Sur Olamim, sobre todo es alabar a el Jai Sur Olamim. Ayuntáronse en las flores a alabar al Dios a una que las crió tan donosas, lindas sin tallar ninguna, dicen verajos en ellas, como dicen en la luna, así dice cada una, no hay más mejor que mí, sobre todo es alabar a el Jai Sur Olamim, sobre todo es alabar a el Jai Sur Olamim.
Now, these songs in the performance of our dear Soli Levi. This is part of the Gerinaldo group. As I said before, the Gerinaldo group was pioneer in presenting the Moroccan repertoire. Mostly people didn't know about this treasure of the Moroccan musical tradition. And Gerinaldo were among the I think practically the first one that put it on stage. Now Soli will sing for us this copla. Pay attention, he begins with a very improvisatory way, because this is the way in the Eastern traditions it's performed. So, Soli Levi.
Alabar quiero al Dios que es grande, ya lo soldado que crió para los hombres muchas maneras de flores y ajuntáronse las flores a alabar a Dios a una que las crió tan donosas, lindas sin talla ninguna, dicen verajot en ellas, como dicen en la luna, y así dicen cada una, no la hay más mejor que mí, sobre todo es de alabar a el Hay sur Olamim, sobre todo es de alabar a el Hay sur Olamim, y todas son diferentes en colores y en olores, y entre todas las mejores es el almizcleromim, sobre todo es de alabar a el Hay sur Olamim, sobre todo es de alabar a el Hay sur Olamim, y vino la rosa.
As you see in the picture, we have Judith Cohen, which accompanied solely with oud, and we see also Oro Anaori Librovich, who is a very, very important figure in the analysis, in the study of the literary aspect of the romancero. So, and now,
Judith just wrote in the chat that she was playing the oud and the bendir in that recording. Bendir is a percussion instrument. Anybody who does not know about the oud, here is a picture of the oud on the arboleras. That's, oops.
no,
That's
this is
the instrument in the middle. Oud came from 3rd century Persia, and it was called al-oud in Arabic. And when it traveled to England, that L sound became connected to the noun. So you got from al-oud, you had lute, and that's how it became a lute. And the British put frets on it, and it became a lute, which you cannot play quarter tones on.
Yes, that's true. And now, shall I? One more example of this same song, sung by Orit Perlman, accompanied by Yaniv and Zev in instruments, from their last CD, Desilia Mi Amor, of the repertoire from Tetuan.
Juntáronse las flores a alabar al Dios que las creó tan donosas, lindas sin tacha ninguna. Dicen verajot en ellas, como dicen en la luna, así dice cada una, no hay más mejor que mí. Sobre todos de alabar, la el Hay sur Olamim, sobre todos de alabar, la el Hay sur Olamim. Saltó la rosa y dijo, todas quedan a un lado, a mí me toca alabar, a Dios grande y abastado, que de mí has hecho rope, también azúcar rosado, en agua será lavada la habló el almizcle. Una flor graciosita a mí me toca lavar, aunque me ves tan chiquita.
Now we go to the wedding songs. Wedding songs are a very important part of the Judeo-Spanish repertoire. Quite often, their texts remind the medieval Spanish poems, the very, very early Spanish literature. The text of the song that we shall see, like others, reflects the Sephardi values, what the society had in mind. The song says, "Wake me up, mother, on the early Monday." Monday is a very special day. In the romances, many important things happen on Monday. Wake me up in the Monday morning to go to the market and buy me a husband who will be a carpenter. It is important that he has a profession. And he is very good at it. He's called master of this job. This is a typical wish for every Jewish mother for her daughter. In this case, Ginette Ben Abu, born in Tetuan, accompanies herself in castagnettes as an evident influence of the years of domination of Spain in northern Morocco. But she doesn't play the castagnettes like in flamenco with two hands, but only with one. And she holds it like in Spanish villages, they play it this way. But she plays the 6 beats of the song, that is 6/8. But with the silence in the last comes up a syncopa feeling. And accompanying Ginette is her son, Jackie, with very good Moroccan, specialist in Moroccan music. He accompanies in the sonasha, or tamborin, or pandero, which is obligato accompaniment for wedding songs. As they say, no hay boda sin pandero. There is no wedding without pandero. Now, let's listen to Ginette. Levantisme, madre. Un lunes de mañana.
¿Qué otro?
And she asked, ¿qué otro? And this has to do with our next audio from Arboleras, where they sing as it should be sung in the real wedding. They sing one song after the other, connected by the same rhythmic structure. So when she say, hay otro, because the normal way of singing will be to continue into another one. And this is what they do in Arboleras. Wedding songs by Arboleras, starting with this one.
Levantisme, madre, un lunes de mañana, fuérame al mercado por ver cómo alborea mi pastor. Mercará un marido de honra y de fama, carpintero era, maestro le llaman, ay mi pastor. Maestro, maestro,
Now, the choice of a husband is the theme of the next song. In this case, a free translation of a Turkish song, in which every possible husband is rejected by the prospective bride, being either too tall or too small or too handsome, and joyfully accepting the drunkard. In the adoption and adaptation of the Turkish song, we see the important position of the mother in the Jewish family. In the Turkish song, it is the father who is presenting the groom. In the Jewish song, it is the mother. However, as you will see, Alhambra reverts to the father like in the original Turkish song. But this is the original song, Susanna Victor, born in Istanbul and recorded in Tel Aviv.
Hija mía, te voy a dar a un alto. Hija mía, te voy a dar a un alto. No quiero madre, no quiero. Él es muy alto, yo no lo alcanzo. No quiero madre, no quiero. Él es muy alto, yo no lo alcanzo. No quiero madre, no quiero. Hija mía, te voy a dar a un baixo. Hija mía, te voy a dar a un baixo. No quiero madre, no quiero. Él es muy baixo, serás tan baixo. No quiero madre, no quiero. Él es muy baixo, serás tan baixo. No quiero madre, no quiero. Hija mía, te voy a dar un hermoso. Hija mía.
Okay, and now we shall have the version by Alhambra. In this case, Isabel, please tell us about how you put it on stage.
Well, little did I know that we were actually going back to the original by making it padre rather than madre. Because we had a male singer, so we made him the father.
Okay.
What we're doing is acting out the words for an audience that speaks neither Ladino nor Spanish. So we're making as much drama out of it as possible. Let's hear it first, and then I'll tell you more. It's filmed in a very famous church in New York called Stuyvesant Church, which is where Peter Stuyvesant is buried.
No quiero padre, no quiero.
So what you heard from the kanun player, Michael Hess, and from the oud player, Haig Manukian, on the oud, are taksims. And taksims in this Middle Eastern music are improvisations within the makam. So they are never the same from performance to performance. As you see, the personnel of Alhambra has changed a lot over the years. Haig Manukian we lost in 2014. Michael Hess is quite ill and has retired from performing. Thank God. Rami El-Aser on percussion is still with us. Yes, cantor Dan Pincus is the singer, but we now have a female singer, Jenny Luna. The new people are so young that I don't understand their jokes during rehearsals. Oh yes, you asked about the sham. By the way, this song is in the Husseini Makam, which has a half sharp on the second and 6 steps. You hear the quarter tone. It imitates the sound of a Turkish zurna, as I said before. And now Simchat Torah from Flori Jagoda. Flori herself says that the style that she uses here is the Bosnian musical style of the 30s and 40s, which was what she learned in her childhood.
Simchat Torah, Simchat Torah, Yesed nació la criatura, Yesed nació la criatura. Simchat Torah, Simchat Torah, Simchat Torah. Simchat Torah, Simchat Torah, Simchat Torah. Pasteles de mis días, buenos pasteles de mis días. Simchat Torah, Simchat Torah, Simchat Torah. Simchat Torah, Simchat Torah, Simchat Torah.
This is one of, I think it's around 32 songs that Flori composed herself. They're wonderful songs. And this is going to be a video of Alhambra's performance in La Jolla, California, on September 15th, 2019. And this is the young group. The personnel are Jenny Luna on vocals, Miranda Hostetter on violin, Adam Good on the oud. I'm playing flute and doing backup vocals, and Rami El-Aser on percussion.
Criatura, mi adoración.
Susanna, can you hear me?
Yes?
Would you say something about how you notate the embellishments of the native singers, which are so difficult and so complex?
It is difficult. Normally, what I do is I listen when we have a melisma with many notes in one syllable. This is one of the problems to notate. So then I put it in a very slow motion, slower. Now I can hear it slower, not so bad. Originally, I was in the Phonoteca, and then I used half the time, half the velocity, half the speed. So it came out. But then I could find each note. So I wrote all these notes very small, in small notes. And this is the way to notate them, because otherwise, this is like, you know, like cooking without condiments. You see, these are the condiments of the music. This is what embellishes it, that makes it to be what it is. So this is important to, yeah. So this is the way I notate the very small, and of course we mark the half bemol or half diez sharp with different signs, or with the arrow up or down from the sound, from the note written. I don't know if it answered the question more or less.
Interesting, yeah. Okay, now we're going into using Sephardic songs as a basic for composition. I was asked by the Apollo Chamber Players for their holiday concert in 2018 to compose a work for string quartet based on themes from Hanukkah melodies. So I decided to use several Sephardic songs, some of which are from the Hanukkah tradition. And they also wanted a sing-along at the end. So what better sing-along than Otro Candericas? The video that you'll be seeing is a performance we gave this past December, again, during the pandemic, when, of course, there was no audience. So I asked the quartet if they would sing the refrain with me. So you will hear the quartet. I just want to thank Geraldine Auerbach and hope she's having a wonderful vacation in the Lake Country. Lori Black for putting together the original file, and the infinitely patient Philip Alexander, who has been working throughout this whole session, putting together the photographs and videos and audios. Thank you all. And now we're open to questions.
No question. Thank you.
Well, I won't be shy. I'll quote something that I put in the chat directly to you, Isabella, and that is that when I studied Ocho Candelitas with Flori Jagoda at a North American Jewish Choral Festival session many years ago, she actually taught us to do something that she herself had not recorded that way with Ocho Candelitas, which is to start Uno candelica, dos candelicas, tres candelicas, cuatro candelicas, just getting faster and faster like a runaway train.
Colorado each chorus.
And the last time I saw her at a subsequent choral festival, I checked with her. I said, do I remember correctly? This is like 20 years later. I said, do I remember correctly that this is actually how you wanted us to do this? Because you didn't record it yourself that way. And she said, yes, it's something I came up with later on, years after I'd written the song. And she confirmed that that's the way she really prefers that it be done.
Yeah, whenever I perform it, I do that on the last verse.
I saw that you did speeding up on the last verse, but she actually taught us to do that for every verse.
Uh-huh. Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Comments, questions? I'm looking at the chat to see if there are any.
Isabel, some people have asked about how to get some of these recordings. I know some of these recordings came out a few decades ago and may not be easy to obtain, but if you have some ideas, that would be very helpful.
Well, I can't answer for Susanna's recording, so she will. Susanna, how can they get your recordings?
What are you asking? I didn't understand the question.
How are people able to obtain both your field recordings and your arboleras recordings?
Well, I always feel that whenever arboleras or someone sings correctly one song, then he keeps alive something that probably is impossible to listen again, because really many of my informants are already in mundo mejor, they're not anymore with us. But the main idea is that the singers must listen a lot to the original. And I see that these arboleras, every time we have a new performance, the week before, they listen again and again and again, 1,000 times, you see? This is the only way, because there are many things that even the musical transcription cannot pass on. The pronunciation, the kind of voice. For instance, professionals used to use H in between. For instance, el rey cuando madrugaba. They sing el rey cuando madrugaba. This is terrible, nothing to do with the original. They don't make ha 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 ha, but they make ha, very legato, you see. So this is part of the things that only can be corrected listening again and again. This is my feeling. And it is yes, it's my way of say thanks to the
The Alhambra recording, the one, is possible to download individual tracks from Alhambra's website, which is www.alhambragroup.com. And I can put that in the chat. The others are available if you contact me via the Alhambra website, or I will put my email address and I can get the earlier Alhambra recordings to you. We made actually 4. The first one is not available at all. The other two are.
May I say something else about available disc? All the CDs that I presented today, except the latest one, the Saloniki and Tetuan, they're sold out. They're impossible to get. So I put them on the YouTube. And all what I put in YouTube go under a general title, Colección Susana Weich-Shahak. So you get in and you have a lot of original informant singing. What we saw today, the performance of the singers, we have a lot of things. And this was my idea, that to make available original songs so this for the singers to listen and to learn and to do properly with love and respect. This is what requires this beautiful repertoire, in my view. So you get in Colección Susana Weich-Shahak and you see a lot of informants from all over, from Turkey, from Saloniki, from Morocco, a lot of them. And now we have also these CDs that you can listen in the YouTube, because you cannot buy them anywhere. So this was my way to make them available. Questions?
I believe Alex Knapp has a question.
Oh, Alexander. Yes, Alexander.
Hello. I really enjoyed that enormously. A fantastic program. Thank you very much to both of you, Susanna, and to Isabel. I do have a question, which I think is probably addressed more to Isabel, but to both of you, really. And that is the sort of the philosophical issue of making arrangements of traditional melodies which are monodic, usually. Now, I know that there are many important Western composers who have made musical arrangements with Western instruments, accompaniment, so to speak, of traditional Judeo-Spanish songs, ballads, etc. And I also know that there are a number of people who work in the field of studying Judeo-Spanish music who feel that it's wrong to actually impose Western accompaniments and harmonizations upon melodies that come from a different kind of tradition, not from a primarily Western or Western European style. So I'd just like to ask, what would you say? Because I know that certainly, Isabel, you have a very open view about harmonization and making arrangements of music from the Sephardic tradition. But what would you say to people who say that one should not be doing that because it distorts or it corrupts the nature, the essential nature of the melodic line itself?
Well, before I answer that one, Alex, I want to say that you're too modest, because you made some gorgeous arrangements for voice and piano. I know of 4 Sephardic songs. I love your arrangements. Of course, the piano is a tempered instrument, and you cannot get microtones on a piano. So already you are away from the tradition. Basically, we are dealing with Middle Eastern music. Middle Eastern music has almost no harmony, but is much more complex in its melodies and its rhythm, probably, than Western music. I love the compromise. You know, you're playing for Western audiences. Why not inject some Western influences in it?
Can I say something?
Please.
The main, it starts with this idea to treat these songs with love and respect. This means not to violate them. You can add, and you see, I understand that groups need to add things. Why? Why? It is a need, really need, and a logical need, because these songs were functional. When they were functional, the cantadera, they sing and everyone could sing along. And if he couldn't sing along, at least he would understand perfectly well what the music said and what the words saying. Now we are divorced the song from its function. We have separated the song from the public. So I understand that the musicians try to make a bridge, a very difficult bridge, the language and the ambience and the need and what the song says for one and for the other. I understand this bridge, but it can be done good and it can be done less good. So I don't mind any use of any instrument, but use it cleverly. You can use a guitar, but play a drum, so a drone, you know, one same note repeat as a basic. This is perfectly normal with the repertoire. You see, this needs, what I must say, this demands from the musician a very high level of musical intelligence. It is not easy. It is not easy. It demands a lot, but this is what I say.
Can I chime in on this from mine? Can I chime in on the same question? So I'm really interested these days. There's a lot of discussions in ethnomusicology called decolonizing ethnomusicology. And long before this question came up, I mean, 2 decades ago, I was already thinking that it was a kind of colonization. And aesthetically, you know, there's wonderful things that you can do, and people have done beautiful arrangements aesthetically, and people have sung traditional songs, not only Sephardic, but from many traditions in all kinds of ways. But to me, there's already a fantastic tradition of Western art music. It's great. And there are many fantastic traditions of, you know, music from different cultures. And to me, why on earth would you need to foist, you know, this Western tradition, which is beautiful? It's not, the tradition itself is wonderful, but why would you need to foist it on something which is totally different? We don't take Balinesian gamelan usually and arrange it for 4-part Western harmony. You know, occasionally people do, but not as a practice. We don't normally take Indian classical music and do that. We don't even do it a lot with klezmer, but people seem to see Sephardic music as some kind of, I don't know, plasticine or Play-Doh that they use to express their own aesthetics or approach. And to me, when I hear a beautifully sung line, you know, with ornaments and the kind of melisma Shoshana was talking about, when I hear a beautifully sung line like that, a beautiful piece, why do something else to it? Why take out the microtones and the rhythmic subtleties and the melismas? You could compose new music, wonderful new music, you know, using, like Bartok. Bartok didn't actually arrange traditional music. He collected it, he wrote it down, and he composed using elements of it. And he made these wonderful, amazing compositions using elements of the musics that he studied. So that's my 2 pieces. But when I interviewed people, remember Shoshana, after my doctorate, I did a project. I made 2 cassettes and I took them around to all different people from Sephardic communities. And they were cassettes of arrangements by different people. And I didn't say a thing. I just put them on. And then on the other cassette player, I recorded their reactions. And they reacted to all the things I thought they wouldn't react to. My theory as an ethnomusicologist, you know, was that they would respond to vocal timbre and say, oh, this is the wrong vocal timbre. And they didn't. They responded to different gender roles and to pronunciation. You could harmonize something and they'd say, oh, well, whatever. But then you could sing it with bad pronunciation and they'd have fits. Or you could have a woman singing a men's song, you know, a liturgical song, and they would have fits. The only thing was they really didn't like opera singing, is in my experience. And I interviewed, I don't know, 30, 40 people directly. And the last thing, in Geroneldo, what we did to present in public is we took ballads, narrative ballads, and we divided them up by dialogue. So rather than harmonizing them, we often added one melodic instrument, but then Sali Levi, que descanse, may rest in peace, would sing, say, a male's voice, and I or Kelly Sultan Amar would answer him with the woman's part if it was a dialogue song, or we'd switch up the narrator part. And that was the way that we presented it on stage, in a way that didn't change the music at all, or the vocal timbre, or the way it was presented, but gave the audience that little extra drama that Isabel was talking about, and, you know, infusing it with.
I would compare this to what the klezmatics have done in the field of klezmer music. That is, they did not imitate exactly what they heard in old field recordings. They created something totally new. You know, it is.
But, you know, to me, the difference between what the Klezmatics or a Michael Alpert or someone, and you yourself actually do, and a lot of other people do, is they first get to know the tradition, then they change it.
Of course.
And that's what people do who grow up in a tradition. They grow up with a tradition, they get to know it, they do something different, they change it, they add to it. My problem with a lot of Sephardic music, and it's getting a bit better now because so many recordings are available, but my problem has been that people just jump in, take it off the page or off a second or third or fourth hand recording, and then they start. So it's quite different from the Klezmatics studying and learning a tradition and then saying, okay, we're not going to copy it. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to change it, coming up with something new. And just jumping into a tradition where you don't speak the musical or the linguistic language and just say, oh, this is mine. I'm going to change it. So.
Agreed.
I'm going to jump in here. There's some very interesting comments on the chat about this. I would recommend people to have a look. This feels like a debate that could run and run. Neil's got his hand up, so I'm going to ask him to come in there.
It's actually a perfect follow-up on what Judith just said. I have a huge library which includes everything in the way of Sephardic and Mizrahi and Ladino music that I've been able to obtain. And while I didn't have time getting ready to do a Memorial Day service in the cemetery yesterday morning to prepare for this by actually sitting and comparing the transliteration that's supposed to give us the sounds, it's very clear to me from the things, even within what Velvel Pasternak published, much less all the other sources, what few that I have besides transcontinental, that there are varying traditions of how to pronounce certain Hebrew consonants within the huge geographic spread of Sephardi music from literally Morocco to the Middle East, to the Levant, and then of course Mizrahi music is another completely different subject because there you get a little Arabic influence in the pronunciations. How would you all suggest, I'd be curious to hear from each of you specialists, how would you suggest that somebody like me, who, as far as I know, doesn't have a drop of Sephardi blood in me, choose for a given song what among the at least 4 or 5 slightly different versions of supposedly, quote, proper, unquote, pronunciation of Ladino really is supposed to be, particularly for the letter chet.
I'll leave that to Shoshana.
No, don't worry about it. What I think is, of course, when I make a book about romancero, for instance, then I give from one romance several versions because everyone is a little bit different from the other. And who am I to decide which is the best one? So I have to give the options, and the composer may choose one or the other or many of them. This is open. What I want to say that
talking about pronunciation of a particular consonant.
What?
In any text.
I didn't get it. What is
it? Shoshana, Cantor Neil is referring to the different Ladino pronunciations in different Ladino communities.
Well, it depends. You got to a point in which I am now, because we made a Saloniki CD, so we're speaking in one way. For many times in Saloniki, the H in Spanish, in modern Spanish, is F. We say, the Ladino speakers from Turkey say hijo, is a son, hijo, in Spanish, hijo. In Saloniki, it's fijo. They kept the F from the early Latin, filio, they kept the F. So in Saloniki, we have to pay attention. Now we worked on Izmir, is another pronunciation. And now I will tell you a secret. We are trying to do something on Bulgaria, and believe me, this is difficult because they close the vowels. O becomes U, and E becomes E, but not really E, something in between. So I think our poor Orit Perlman will suffer because we shall try to make it as good as possible.
In other words, the thing is, I think what Shoshana is saying is you have to listen to it. Unless you know all these communities very well and you know what they sound like already, You're not going to get it from what's on the page. You're going to get it from listening to the recordings. And, you know, when Isabella and I were starting out, there weren't all these recordings online. The only way to hear them was to go to Spain or to go to Israel or to go to these places and listen. And now, you know, you can click and you can hear them. Flori Jagoda's pronunciation is closer, I think, Shoshana, to what you were talking about with Bulgaria, with the closed vowels. So she won't say cinco candelicas, she'll say cintiu candelicas. But unless you listen to it, and you listen to people talking, I mean, any more than a Litvak speaking Yiddish is, you know, not going to, like, if I don't speak Yiddish. My grandfather spoke it. It was his native language, but he didn't speak it to me. So if I'm learning a Yiddish song, I actually have to go and hunt up the recordings or study with a real expert like Michael Alpert or the late Adrian Cooper and just learn from them and listen and listen and listen. It's the only way, really.
What I want to ask from the composers is, I mean, we have always this feeling that many times the Sephardic songs are presented like a sort of magic, of nostalgia, of things in the air. You feel that the singer, ototo, he levitates. Everything is, and it is so far from the Sephardi. The Sephardi everywhere. It is like a Spanish peasant now. The foot, los pies, the legs on the earth, and they are vital, and they are strong, and they are energetic. They are not this. It is nothing. It is far from their being. You see, this is what I like also in Arama. It has the energy of the people. The people are very strong and very clear about these ideas and what they think. The music must also be in this way, not something ethereal. I don't know if the right word in English. Ethereal exists the word?
Ethereal, yeah. That's what I've been saying for years and years, exactly the same thing. I mean, Sephardic people are not any different from any other people. When they're spiritual, they're spiritual. And when they're funny, they're funny. And when they're strong, they're strong. And when they're in love, they're in love. And, you know, and when they're being satirical, they're being satirical. They're not any different from anyone else. And the songs are exactly the same range. That's why one of my first paper in Israel, Shoshana, remember when I met you, I think in person, was on humor in Sephardic songs. And I remember Eli Schleifer came up to me and said, that was so funny, I couldn't stop laughing. And the other, Yudit Etzion came up to, no, Judith Cohen, the brilliant musicologist with my name, came up to me, and I'll never forget what she said. She said, now I know for real you're not me. But that was the focus, was humor and satire in Sephardic songs, because it's what Shoshana says. People, right? Sephardic songs are all passionate. No, they're all spiritual. No, I mean, some are. When it's the moment to be spiritual, they're spiritual.
I remember we had a interdisciplinary project at Jerusalem with people from anthropologists and all that. The anthropologists say, I would want to know if we took one song, Gerinello precisely, which I had 16 versions at that time. So we want to compare them. And she wants to know, well, what is the mimic, the expression in their faces in their different parts of the song. It's a song with action. There is a love of the princess for a servant, and the servant comes at night, and the king fights her. She said there must be some sort of emotion. So she went there with a photographer, and I had until now about a pack like this of photographs of every verse had a photograph. And it happened nothing in the face, because the singer sings a romance, and the romance has enough action in itself. She doesn't have to do any grimacing. So normally it is not used, this idea is lacking. But it is, I understand very well why in Alhambra they make a theatralization of the dialogue, because there is a dialogue in this. So it is, whatever makes people closer to the sources is Baruch.
And there, I'm afraid I have to draw it to a close because we're coming to, well, in the UK we're coming up to, in the UK we're coming up to 7 o'clock, which is the time when we need to stop. Mark is going to wrap up in a second. I'd just like to personally and from everybody thank our two conversationalists and everybody else who's taken part. This has been real.
An enormous thanks to you, Phil. You did a fabulous.
And to Lori also for the help. We couldn't have done it otherwise. So,
it's my pleasure. It's been a real wonderful learning curve for me. So I have really enjoyed it, and I'm delighted to have ended on the kind of breaking through the exoticism of Sephardi music. It's about time we realise that Sephardi Jews, like all people, come in all shapes and sizes, and their music is going to reflect that. Thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to Mark to wrap up.
Thank you, Phil, for all of your hard work to make this work. And of course, to Isabel Gans and Susanna Weichshahak. We're very grateful for this astounding presentation of a lifetime of incredible work that you've done to contextualize it for us. I learned so much and very, very grateful. And I think we've really begun a very important conversation, which I do hope that we can continue. We hope you'll enjoy it. Join us next week at our regular time. We will have a wonderful program with Martha Stellmacher in Germany and Harvey Roten from Paris to really look at the amazing center of Jewish music in Paris that Harvey is very involved with. And they have wonderfully produced some very accessible online materials. We're then booked well for the next few weeks through the month of June through July, and we hope that you'll join us. Again, a really big thanks, and have a wonderful rest of the day or evening. Take care.